We've watched thousands of mortgage notes transactions close on Paperstac. 30 to 50% of them are done through self-directed retirement accounts. We're going to tell you the 5 mistakes that most people make so you can avoid them on your next self-directed retirement account close. Welcome back to the Paperstac podcast. My name is Rick Allen. This is Brett Burky coming back to you with another episode of Knowledge Bombs.
On a roll?
Yeah, we are on a roll. We met with somebody today who was like, man, I came in late after you guys had already started recording these things, and I went through all of them. So it's good to have lunch with them. If you're ever in Florida, in the Orlando area, this guy drove down from Jacksonville. He's a good buyer, so it was good to sit down and meet with him. A little shout out to Bo. But it was, if you're in the area, want to grab lunch, we're always welcome.
Got some good places to eat down here.
Yeah, I got some good food. So what do you got for us today, Brett?
Well, it kind of builds a little bit back on the last episode from last week, which is buyer mistakes. But some of these things, those are more focused on buyer mistakes that you can make no matter how you buy. This episode is a little bit more focused on the buyer mistakes. I wouldn't say mistakes, except because maybe the buyer's unknown. Buying with a self-directed IRA because it could be could be tricky because sometimes they have all kinds of different regulations, and we try to get a standardized thing from them. It's hard, but we're going to try to see. We know a couple of the things that seem to be pretty typical, and with this, we're going to go through these because if you are buying with a self-directed IRA, there's a couple that make sense that you're going to see over and over again. And I mean, we're going to go through 5. Is it 5?
So a list. I like
another list.
So I got a 5 plus a bonus.
I got a bonus too.
And I just saw this one happen on the platform, and it's caused it's caused a lot of problems, and it's caused problems for the guy that bought it.
Okay,
yeah,
that one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
Let's dive right in. All right, so the first one is understand your vesting profile. What's a vesting profile? That is how you're taking title to the note. And it's basically, usually it's how your account is titled. So Advantage IRA or Quest IRA or whoever it is.
I don't think there's any Quest anymore.
Oh, Quest, whatever. Paperstac IRA, FDO, Brett Burky IRA, whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody has a specific way that they want you to title it, and it's tied directly to the name on your account. They have specific rules they have to follow. So really, you need to understand what that is up front. Talk to whoever your advisor is or whoever your point of contact is at your self-directed retirement custodian, so that way you can get exactly how they want it vested. The reason for that is all the documents on the platform, whether it's the purchase sale agreement, the assignment, the allonge, if there's any deeds, anything like that, the disbursement agreement, it all is based off of the information that you provide. So if you don't provide accurate vesting information, all the documents are going to be wrong. And that's going to it'll slow down the transaction because we're going to have to redo all the documents. So please, please, please understand that you need to know exactly how you need to put down your vesting profile, how you're taking title of the note.
It's usually a good idea to just let your SDIRA, your custodian, know, hey, look, I'm going to go to Paperstac. I'm going to buy a note. I need to know up front what I need to have here. And it's, a lot of people, hey, I got my name right. It's
address too.
Address too. Who's signing? Is it you? Is it the SDIRA? Because you don't want them to, you verify, I got the name right, but then they don't give you the exact address and they don't get you the exact signing. So I've seen it before that you're halfway done with the transaction and then the custodian wakes up that day. He's like, actually, I should probably sign the document. It's like, well, you just screwed up everything. Now we got to unroll all this crap. And so if you get them to, hey, you said I signed the document. You said it's your address, and this is how I have to tie the title. It's a lot harder for them to say, well, now I'm thinking about doing it differently. It's like, no, you said this is the way to do it. So if you can get them up front to say, hey, stamp approval. This is how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. I mean, get them recorded on a recorded line. Fireflies that stuff. Play it back for them it's like an interrogation. You're just, hey, what'd you say here? So, I mean, that was a little much, but it's true because I've seen it where it's changed halfway down the process.
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
For sure. So
vesting profiles.
Yeah, vesting profiles number one. The second thing is skipping the directive investment form. That kind of ties into the vesting will be on there. But Brett, tell me about the directive investment and what all is going into that.
So those are things that you actually get from your custodian. You want to have that prior to even probably getting to the part of vesting profile, because that's something that there's other things that you'll have to provide to them that will be specific maybe to the asset itself. There's things they would want to know, such as, directive of investment, like, are you sending this money to escrow?
Purchase price?
Well, yeah, all those things are going to have to be there as well. And then they're going to want to do a little bit of their own due diligence on it. And that directive of investment form should be done maybe right around the time of vesting. You're not even into closing yet. Because
it's really going to have all the nuts and bolts of the transaction. It's going to have all the details.
And how you're funding it. Because the fact if you're funding, there's a whole different process. If you're sending, they want to see you send it to escrow. Because when you try to send it directly, the funds directly to the seller, the save on the $250 for the escrow payment becomes a giant pain in the butt. Because then they'll want to see the documents signed. It's like, we can't have you sign the documents prior to sending money. And then it's this big back and forth. But that's all going to be on the directive of investment form. So making sure you say, and just make it easy. Just say, yeah, we're going to use escrow. So then it makes at least that process easy. Because that form right there is something that can slow down the process.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake. The mistake could be made in the vesting profile of getting that wrong. Not providing the directive of investment form fast enough could slow down their due diligence on making sure they're going to release the funds. So that's all I pretty much have for that. But
it's really the rule book, the playbook on how the transaction is going to go is based off of that directive of investment.
Yeah, and as long as they haven't changed things, we have everyone's directive of investment forms in our knowledge base, because at one point I had them all give it to us because I was like, hey, look, this. Someone says, hey, where do I find this? I'm like, I don't even work for the company. I know this is where it's at, though, because, it's like I need to just speed this process up.
Because we've done a lot of them. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
Yeah, we are not farmers.
No. Or we're not providing legal advice either. Okay, so the third mistake. So first mistake is knowing your vesting profile. Second mistake is don't skip the directive of investment. Get that soon, get it early, get it filled out, and get it over to your people. The third one is not sending over draft documents to your custodian. We can get you those documents with big letters draft written across the top or across the page. So that way they can look at it, review it, and if there's anything that they want to change, they can make the change or request a change made prior to getting signed. That's big. Because this is how you keep happy counterparties. If you're buying something and you have the seller sign a document, hey, they sign the assignment, and then, or the purchase agreement, then the assignment, then the launch, then the disbursement, and then the custodian comes back and they say, oh, we really need to change something on there. We don't like the address or whatever. Now you got to go back and we got to have the seller re-sign all that stuff. And they'll do it, and we'll encourage them to get it done in a timely manner. But it's pain. Somebody, they got their money, they sold it, they want to be done, move on to the next asset, and so having to go back and redo work over again, it's not efficient. So if you can get those documents to your custodian with draft on there, it makes life easier.
Yeah, I wish there was like a document that basically said the custodian signed, we are signing off on this document.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I've seen it where they say, yeah, it's approved. It's like, and then like a month later, like, wait a second. I'm like, no. You approved it at this date. But just making sure, hey, are you 100% correct? Everything, you're good with this. And sometimes they will want to see it without the draft. We can do it. Still don't understand why. It's still the same document. It's not like we're going to have the seller sign. When the seller signs it, it's once the funds are there. Maybe they have some system I don't know about, but that's happened. But it can be done. Ideally, they can just get it with the draft. You're going to find these documents on the Files tab. You will not see these documents until the closing data has been entered in. So you might want to run that by the custodian. Hey, this is the closing data that we have, or this is what the seller has provided. They might want to look at the documents before that. Go, okay, this is what's going to be on there. But those documents will show up on the Files tab. You can download them prior to getting to the part where you have to actually wire funds. And so then that keeps the transaction moving along.
Yep. So get them the documents up front. Mm-hmm. All right. So the fourth one, and this probably could have gone at the beginning, but it's don't loop them in. Your self-directed retirement custodian, don't loop them in at the last minute. If you get them involved early, get them involved often, get them the direct, everything that we're kind of talking about is like, hey, look, they're going to play a huge role in the funding aspect, the titling aspect, pretty much the entire transaction process. Get with them early in the process. When you're looking at notes, you can even ask them, hey, look, I'm looking to buy a note on Paperstac. Is there anything you need to tell me now, or do you want me to come back to you once I start a transaction and narrow down pricing? That is important. Get them involved early. It avoids and can eliminate a lot of the issues that we're talking about with them needing changes. Another thing when it comes to changes, if there's something they want changed, give us all the changes at once. Don't bleed them in over time. Don't have me adjust the vesting profile, how it's titled, and then come back and say, okay, that's done. Now I need you to change the address. And no, now that's done. I need you to, add a semicolon here. No, just give me everything at once. We're really good at multitasking.
I think maybe they play on lawyer rates. Maybe. So I got the fifth one. If that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So the fifth one that I would say that a lot of people don't think about. It's a two-part one. First off, make sure you include the wire code when they're sending the wire. Make sure that's important. And I think a lot of that you can put on the directive of investment form, but also understand, hey, are you paying for the fee out of a credit card, or are you paying for the fee out of your SDIRA? Because I think what happens is sometimes the custodian will send over, they'll say, hey, this is the purchase price. And they look at our fee and go, here's the purchase price. And it's like, well, we don't fund the deal, and it doesn't show up funded on the site until all the money's in. So if you just forgot the fee and they sent the purchase price, and when are they sending it? You need to know, hey, are you sending these as separate things? And I don't know why they do that. Just maybe there's something in their ruling that they have to keep them separate. But knowing that up front could first eliminate some of the headache you might have by going, is my money there yet? Or also, because we won't click the button officially saying, hey, there's not a thing that shows up on the transaction. Hey, half the money's here, a third of the money's here. It just, when it's all there, then it's marked off. It's not, we don't, and so unless, you just need to find out how they're sending it. That's important. And a lot of people don't.
And the wire code is it. Make sure the wire code's included, because that's how we attach your funds to your deal in the account. Mm-hmm. If, you can imagine that there's multiple $20,000 wires coming in at any given day. And so if as long as there's wire codes, it stops us from having to do a bunch of research, and it makes the deal keep going.
Yeah, and on both too. So if you're sending the wire code for the payment amount, wire code for the fee, doesn't matter. Those things need to always go together.
And lastly, this is one that we just had. We had a buyer. He was buying a note half with his personal funds and half with his self-directed retirement funds. And the way his account was set up, he was supposed to send funds to his custodian, who then would wire the funds to escrow. But he bypassed his custodian and just sent funds directly to escrow. What does that mean? It means that it may have triggered a taxable event. So make sure that you have the proper routing of funds. It's following the prescribed method that your retirement account wants you to do, your custodian is requesting. Be very structured, be very detailed on that, because you don't want to, not that this is tax advice, but you don't want to create a taxable event.
So you're going to a self-directed IRA company.
Yeah, exactly. So
let me follow this, because others might be in my same headset. So let's just say I have my money with Bank of America and I have it with Equity Trust, right? So I want to send $50,000 from this one, $50,000 from this one. If I send $50,000 from this, does that mean I get that 50% tax?
Yeah, you're 50% ownership over there. This gentleman actually he has checkbook control. I don't know the exact reason, but the funds had to go in through his self-directed retirement account custodian, and he never sent it to them. He just sent the funds directly to us from one of his accounts. So I'm not exactly sure why he did that, but we're having to do some backtracking, and really it's on his end. He's having to do a lot of work to make sure he can make things right. Otherwise, he may just have bought something that's going to be not tax sheltered.
So how would I? So I'm just trying to figure this out. If you don't know,
I don't know. I'm going to tell you now. I don't know, because it's different for everybody. I don't understand how his funds weren't already sitting with his self-directed retirement account, but that's how he has it set up. Okay,
so this is where you're actually going to lean on
You're definitely going to lean on them. Make sure that you're routing funds the proper way, not just the purchase price, also the Paperstac fee. Sometimes they're going to want to say, look, we're not paying that fee, or you can't pay that fee, or you can pay that fee. I don't know. You have to check with them on routing funds the proper way. That's the biggest one.
And each one's different too. They got their own processes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And we're flexible. I mean, if we have to send an invoice, as long as it gets paid, right?
Yeah. Well, we can send invoices, do what we need to do, but we just, at that point, don't look to us and be like, well, how do I send the funds the right way? It's like, that's between you and your.
That's what you're paying them for.
That's what you're paying them for. Yeah. So
they got that answer.
Yeah. So I think that wraps it up for this one. It was kind of something wanted to piggyback on what we talked about, in the past couple episodes. So that's it, really.
I think we're
follow the steps when it comes to it. Easiest piece of advice when you're buying with your self-directed retirement account: get them involved early, ask them questions, and give them as much information as you can.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's and then we'll get off the mistake train. I think we've been on 3 lists.
Yeah, we have. So now we're going to show you on the next episode. We're going to show you that you don't need $100,000 in your account to start buying loans. That's a big misunderstanding people have. Like, oh, I got to have $100,000. No, we see people buying stuff starting with $25,000. Matter of fact, my first loan that we bought was $8,400.
I think mine was 10.
So
10,000.
That one's on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Brett Burky, Rick Allen signing off for this Paperstac podcast.
See ya.